Kol omer kra, v'amar ma'ikra, kol habasar chatzir, v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo. Achein chatzir ha'am, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz, u'davar Eloheinu yakum leolam. A voice says, cry out, but I ask, what shall I cry? All flesh is like grass, and all of its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flower fades when a wind from God blows upon it. Surely, therefore, people are like grass. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of God endures forever. LeDavid mizmor l'Adonai haaretz umloa tevel v'yoshveva ki hu al yamim yasada v'al nahored yichoneneha. Mi ya'aleh bahar Adonai u'mi yakum bimkom kadsho neki chapayim uvar levav asher lo nasa lashav nafshi v'lo nishba lemirma. The earth is the Lord's with all of its fullness. The world is the Lord's with all of its inhabitants. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in the holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. He will receive a blessing from the Lord and a just reward from the God of deliverance. As you know, Lester spent his life building things. Creating things, always a building project, always a vision of what he wanted to do. He walked through life. Anytime he saw a piece of wood, it was like bumping into an old friend. He would have a special relationship with that piece of wood. Sometimes a long-term relationship, because I know some of his projects went on and on. But Marcia, you saw that creative side in him. And if it were a building project that would also involve his grandkids, even better. He once sent me a photo of the chuppah that he made for Debbie and Joe, I believe, for your wedding. Something that looked like the Irish flag. He was teasing. And of course, he built his own casket for today. He was his own man. He was his own man. And he was a man of process. And the process was as important as the end result. If he's a man who likes to build and who liked to create things, and if he admired the process involved, then let's today study the process that created Lester Wyman. Because he's a building project. Who created him? What moments shaped him? And Rochelle, I want to use this moment to offer you condolences because some of these same forces built you. His family owned a hardware store, and he went there every day after school. He learned to work with his hands. That clearly affected him, clearly stayed with him. His parents divorced when he was 2, got back together when he was 6. He lived with his mom and her parents, but during that time, he told me his father came to visit each and every day. His father taught him the importance of showing up. Does that sound familiar? These are the forces that built him, that had an impact on him. This man who you told me would just pop into you in your home after he and your mother divorced. He didn't call, no advance warning, he just showed up. You were clearly his first priority, and nothing was going to sacrifice his time with you. As a father and as a grandfather, he always made time for you. He found the time. He'd go to your games. He'd drive hours to help out. And in his career in social work, he always found the time. He had a tireless work effort. He always gave his clients all the time that they would ever need, because he saw in that moment the power of connection and the power of relationship. He saw the power of creating those connections with people. He took private clients all through his career. They trusted him. He was a good listener. You all said he provided such great emotional support to all of you in communicating throughout his entire life. You could talk to him and he would respond. He was a hard worker, also a brilliant teacher. Evan, you said he was the king of metaphors, right? When he wanted to teach, he knew how to get that idea across, which he used to explain situations in his teaching. As a dad, he was tolerant, he was helpful, patient, and 100% of his focus directed to the person he was talking to. He never seemed distracted. If you were in a conversation, that was an intimate moment for him. He had a deep love for Israel. He took 36 trips there. established training center there. When you look at what he involved himself in, it's clear that Lester valued and believed in the capacity of the human mind, the ability of each of us to train ourselves, to grapple with our problems, and to solve them, to figure it out. Those were holy words, I believe, to him, to figure it out. In his building projects, he much preferred salvaging pieces than replacing them. It's a great metaphor. He didn't believe in throwing away pieces of your life, but perhaps refitting them to help you move into the future. I find it revealing that in those projects, he never looked at an instruction manual, didn't want to follow directions. He figured it out. He was instinctive that way. He trusted his gut and he trusted his process. And in that process, he found great satisfaction and great meaning and great peace. And he was an optimist because he felt he could provide solutions. And your parents certainly showed how much they love you because they wanted to make sure that their relationship would not impact any of you in a negative way. But as both of their lives moved forward, he and Marcia found each other. And in finding Marcia, he found a kindred spirit who understood him and related to him. For all of you, it was a revelation. Suddenly, Lester was using the pronoun we a lot of the time because he was consulting another. For a man who valued connections and who valued relationships, Marcia, you became a vital sense of his connection. You gave his life a degree of satisfaction and support that he relished. He may have been his own man, but being his own man didn't mean he didn't like a connection with another. And he pursued his life 100%. Whatever he did with all of his might. With his grandkids, he took an interest in everything you were doing. Your games he traveled to, he was very proud of all of you. I know, Dan, you said you admired that he never issued judgment from on high. He didn't walk through life with hubris. And that you appreciated. Debbie, I teased about the chuppah, but he really did admire what that chuppah represented about the relationship of you and your husband. He admired that. He also said everyone thought you were his favorite, but he didn't tell me what the real solution was. He didn't resolve that. He simply smiled and said, they think she's my favorite. And Amy, I know you loved working with him. I know you loved working with him and working and following and observing his style and his dedication to clients and the time he would give them and the time he was giving you because he was trying to help you out at the same time. Lester believed in having a vision and getting it done. And whether it was the building of a structure or whether it was reserving a spot for each of you to go, for your family to go as you've been going for 13 years together to find that special spot each year, or if it was the building of a family itself. He got it done. Where's Nicole? Nicole, you did something I don't think you even recognized. You were describing your grandfather. And he says, and I said, describe him. And here's what you said. You said, he sends me emails. He knows what's going on. All present tense. This was yesterday. He was gone. But you continue to use the present tense. He's a good listener. Everything you said was in the present tense. Because I know that influence is still with you in the present tense. I just want to close by saying, I know you guys claim he had no sense of time. He wouldn't arrive on time. I usually wouldn't admit this, but today I'll admit it. We actually started 5 minutes late. I thought it was appropriate. Based on everything that you said, I think it makes perfect sense. Maybe a half hour late might have been more appropriate. 5 minutes is enough. Maybe it wasn't that he had no sense of time. Maybe it was that he was never willing to sacrifice what he was doing right now for what he might be doing in an hour if he got there, quote, on time. Maybe he never wanted to rush the moment. Maybe he realized that every moment is valuable because once you lose that moment, it never comes back. And that's a wisdom. He lived with a good name, and he died with a good name. I want to call on Debbie and Amy. I believe you're coming up.
I'm Debbie, his middle child, I guess, as you all know now, his favorite. It's out there. But, you know, this has been a process, as everything in my dad's life has been a process. And for me, as the process of watching his health decline and the realization that there wasn't going to be a miracle cure for his congenital heart failure, I started thinking about the possibility of life without my dad. I stress the possibility, never really accepting this day would come, but here we are. Other than the deep sadness that I feel since I heard the news on Tuesday, I feel incredibly grateful and lucky to have had Les Wyman for my dad. My dad exemplified what it means to be a father, and this was not something I ever took for granted. My siblings and I, and then the grandchildren, were the center of his world. What my dad always wanted for my siblings and myself is to experience the joys in life as he had, and that is what was vital to his existence. He sought joy from his connections, in particular his relationship with Marcia, his children and grandchildren, and of course his work. He never saw work as a four-letter word, and that's what he wanted for us as well. It was merely an extension of himself and the value that he brought to others. All three of us have relied on my dad for emotional support and guidance. Often he would turn our talks into his sessions as he went into his therapeutic mode. As all of us can attest, that when you sensed you were entering a session with Dad, your initial instinct was to back away. But you engaged and ultimately appreciated his intensity and the wisdom of his guidance. He never told you how it should be, but rather guided you through the process of what was the best route to go. To say that we talked about things with my dad is a true understatement. I am grateful that my children developed the same type of relationship with their grandpa that I had with them. My dad experienced joy until the end. Marcia reported that the morning he died, he was in great spirits. Unfortunately, his heart had no beats left. As I close today, I want to take a moment to thank my dad for being my dad, and to Marcia for bringing so much joy into his life. Dad, I love you, and I will deeply miss you.
I'm Amy. Thank you for being here today, everyone, and for showing up to honor my dad, Les Wyman. I carry around a keychain that someone made for him that says less, L-E-S, is more. That was one of the many sayings he used or quoted to convey his approach to life, to his work. I feel how much he loved me, and I love him. Danny, Debbie, and I share this incredible gift of having a devoted and special father, and our kids feel his love and his delight in being their grandfather. I'm grateful for getting to closely work with my dad, and for almost 18 years co-leading a personal growth group that he started and continuously led, and I mean without a break, for 34 years. When he decided to retire this past March, he orchestrated the transition with such skill and sensitivity to all of us. I told him that I was afraid and hesitant to do it without him for various reasons, and he said, "Don't be so starstruck. You will find a way to work it out." He was my most important mentor. He had generosity, warmth, strength, courage, tenacity, and incredible stamina. Even until the very end, he just could focus. He lived and worked with intentionality, foresight, joy, and wisdom. Most of all, he was curious about his experience and the experience of others. He stuck with things. He believed in what he did and felt a sense of purpose for the things he pursued in his life. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep it less is more. Like I feel like it's a little too long, but I'm going to keep going. He approached his relationships with the same level of intensity. He was calm and patient. He always considered and asked us to think about how our decisions and behavior would impact our relationships. In working with clients and in personal relationships, he believed down to his kishkas that it is imperative that we attend to the existential experience. That is who we are in our core, and how do we let someone know that? How we matter to each other was a focus and driving principle for him, especially toward the end of his life. A phrase he enjoyed saying was, "You can't sit on the same toilet or go to the same wedding with one tuchus." What does that mean? I hear it as a call to being present in your life. I remember when I was about 10 years old, we were at a festival, and he had a license plate frame made, and he put it on his car that said, whatever you do, do it with awareness. We talked about what that meant, and I cannot recall exactly what he told me. However, I absorbed the idea, like so many of his lessons, and it kept sinking in. Be aware, be present, be engaged. Our dad approached his death by making peace with it, and he did that by doing whatever he could do to have agency in his life. He said it was a time of life where there's review, reflections, increased awareness, and looking at patterns. The metaphor he came up with was of an hourglass. There was more sand on the bottom than there was on top, and he didn't know when that sand would run out. He faced dying openly and engaged others in the process because he preferred to not be alone with it, and certainly did not want us to be alone. In a recent email to his bin and cousins on his mother's side, our dad wrote these words: "To everything there is a season. During this season, I'm working at making my peace with dying. Included in this life stage task is taking charge, exercising agency where I can, and reviewing, remembering, and reflecting. I have looked for and not found profound meanings or messages to leave as my legacy. The way I've conducted my life must stand for itself. I'm satisfied." In his house on Ingleside, my dad set out to install a tile ceiling in his bedroom. He started from the outside and worked his way in, which resulted in a faulty ceiling with tiles that did not quite fit. He realized that he should have started in the center and worked his way out. He didn't get upset about his mistake. Instead, he let out his big, hearty laugh and probably said, "Oh, not oy vey." He used this metaphor when helping Evan and I work on a problem, and he said we needed to start in the center, which meant we had to figure out where the center was. This is one of so many metaphors he used to teach, to model, and connect. I believe the center tile for my father was relationship. I know that he wanted to impart that value on his children and grandchildren. I believe in the firebox where he kept his valuable papers, I found a sheet lying on top with this poem for us to read. Us finding the box. He didn't know I'd be reading it today. It says, "My favorite poem, Les Wyman, May 13th, 1998, and it's an author unknown. Step by step, the longest march can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none. And together what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn the mill, singly none. We really appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you.
Nicole, Nancy, Jennifer, and Megan.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm my grandpa's oldest grandchild. I'm Debbie's oldest daughter. I'm Nicole. Today we say goodbye to one of the world's greatest guys and brightest lights. I'm lucky to call this man my grandpa. Over the past few days, people have been telling me stories, and I've come to realize how much of an impact my grandpa has had on not just my life, but on the lives of everyone he has encountered. He was the person you turned to when you were in any type of situation, good or bad. He always seemed to know what to say or what to do. I know for sure that he has gotten me through some pretty tough situations. What set him apart was the fact that he would always follow up to see how I was doing in the aftermath. You could always count on Grandpa to be there. Although I have grown up living almost 400 miles from him, he never missed anything. He showed up to literally everything. He was at every ice show, every birthday, every event, big or small. No matter what, you could always count on him to be your biggest fan and cheering you on. My freshman year of college, he drove 400 miles by himself to come spend the weekend with me. I got to show him where I go to school and saw the joy on his face as I took him from building to building, explaining my day-to-day life. He took me and my friends out to dinner and spent time to just hang out with us. After that weekend, Every one of my friends has said what an amazing man and great human he was. This is a small example of a very special trait my grandpa had. He left a lasting, extremely positive impression on anyone he met. I'm so lucky to have had 20 amazing years of love and support from my grandfather. I will never forget the conversations and joy he brought to me. I will cherish his memory forever. Goodbye, Grandpa. I love you.
Hi, I'm Megan, Debbie's youngest daughter. When I was writing this, all I could think of is how thankful I am to have Lester Wyman as my grandpa, for everything he did and everything he was. To name just a few, thank you for always showing up no matter where I was or what I was doing. Sorry. Thank you for always being interested and thank you for giving me an example of a perfect person. Thank you for all the love and support you had for everyone around you. Thank you for all the laughs and memories you gave me. And lastly, thank you for the past 16 years. I miss you so much already. I love you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, one of Debbie's daughters, obviously. Until this week, I never knew how lucky I was to have him as a grandfather. I guess I took it for granted that he was here, because not everyone has such an amazing role model in their life, even if they live like a block away from their grandparents. So it was really special to have someone like that to be a mentor. He always cared so much. He never, anything I would want to talk about, he never cared, what it was. He would want to talk about it with me. He could spend hours talking about something he doesn't even know anything about, as long as I wanted to talk about it. He cared, the amount of, caring he gave to everyone was a lot. I miss him, so much, and I wish that, I lost track. I'll always have the lessons he taught us. Like everyone said so far, that he's given us, a million lessons each. So that's, something that will never, go away. And the lessons he taught us and taught me will be something I carry forever.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I don't think I need to explain who I am. When I was thinking of something to say today, I couldn't think of any word but lucky. I was the luckiest person, along with all of my cousins, to be able to call Lester my grandpa, along with all of you who are pretty lucky to just know him or be loved by him. We were so lucky for the time that we had and the time that we shared with him. As much as we would all love to see him for the rest of the day, or for the rest of our lives, we would have to understand that we can always remember how special he made us feel, especially each one of my 8 cousins. He loved us more than the world, and I could not put it into words just how much we really mean to him and how much he really mean to us. Just like you've heard from everyone else, we're just so unbelievably lucky for the guy that we had in our lives.
Lincoln, Emmett, and Isaac.
Hey, I'm Lincoln. I'm his oldest grandson. I wrote a letter. Mom, thanks for helping. Dear Grandpa, after I left Ahuja, I went to Grandma's house uninvited, which was a classic Lester Wyman move. We talked for a little bit, and then when I went in the backyard to see her treehouse. I climbed on, and somehow it didn't collapse. I was so grateful. You came up with a crazy idea, and you put hours of work into it just for us. I was blessed to be a part of many of your projects. At first, you were the driving force. You built the treehouse. You made workouts for me when I played football and equipment. You showed me around the hardware store. You built my soapbox derby car, which we actually talked about Monday night. As I grew up, we started to do them together. And as time went on, I did more and more of the work. I had to take you to the store to shop. I painted the garage. I made the railing for the house. We fixed the garbage disposal. Like, it goes on and on. I'm not going to bore you. I, along with everyone over there, helped clean out your house. And I even got to finish that. These projects were not ideal. They were often long, difficult, and frustrating, but they always got done. You taught me that anything can be done with enough creativity and grit, and I wouldn't have that attitude, and I wouldn't be the man I am today without those lessons. I'm sorry for any time I got frustrated when they didn't go well, sleeping past our meeting times, and most importantly, for any time I didn't give 100%, because you always gave every project and everything you did with us 100%. Here. This was added last night with my mom. When I was playing football, you told me that when you played, you'd always run at least one extra lap after practice. This was partially to get in a better shape, but mostly to prove to your coach and to yourself that you were willing to put in the extra work. You would finish the workout and then keep going. I told this story to my mom last night, and she said, this whole summer was an extra lap. You didn't just take the extra lap in football, but in every single thing you did. With your family, with your friends, with your work, you always did more than what was possible, and it showed. And whenever I do anything extra, or anyone here does anything extra, I think it's honoring you. We're following your lead. We're going the extra lap. Grandpa, you did so much for everyone around you. Thank you for 18 years of motivation, advice, company, rides, food, stories, laughter, gas money, family, and love. Dr. Seuss, I found this online. Dr. Seuss once said, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." Thanks for giving everyone a lot to smile about. I love you and I'll miss you.
Hi, I'm Emmett. I'm just going to tell a quick story that I think describes my grandpa very well. Before, I agree with everything Lincoln said. I second it. So, hello. Thank you all for being here to honor my grandfather's life and mourn his death. I think everyone here can agree with me when I say that my grandpa was an absolutely terrific man. He cared about my family to an incredible extent and always did everything he could for us. Besides his loving kindness, Grandpa was a very hardworking man. He was always doing something all the way to the last week of his life and even his last moments. I have a perfect example. About a week ago, Grandpa called me and proposed a project idea to me, another project. He asked if I would like to build a model airplane that we could build all by ourselves, and then when we were done, we would fly it around. I very excitedly accepted because this sounded really fun. My mom drove me and Grandpa out to Mentor to a hobby store, which was unfortunately closed because it was being relocated to another spot in that strip mall. Really tough luck. We tried again another day at a different store. That didn't work. It said hobby store, but it had like a bunch of house decoration stuff. But we did buy candy. I remember asking him if I should get the this candy or this candy, and he said get the Hershey's bar, and I found it was only because he wanted a piece. But after that store didn't work, we eventually decided to stick with the original store, and we waited until it was open in a few days. We called them like 200 times to make sure we wouldn't drive out to Mentor, and it wasn't open. So the day it reopened, my mom drove us out to Mentor for the third time. He still had the same energy, and this time with Marsha aboard to give us more company. It was great. And finally, the store was open. We went to the plane section and soon found out that with modern kits, which I think I already knew, but it was a surprise to him. They came pre-constructed and ready to fly, and right out of the box. And I thought to myself, I didn't say this, but I was thinking, oh, that's awesome. I could just take it out of the box and fly it. But I didn't say that because I knew that he would be very disappointed, because I knew that he wanted to do this so we could build it together. So I was right, because I looked at him the whole time the guy was explaining how it worked. And he was visibly disappointed. He was very disappointed that this plane lacked the project aspect that he loved so much throughout his entire life. He couldn't build it, but we bought the plane anyway. But unfortunately, we will never get to fly it together because he died a couple of days later, and we never got the right conditions. But anyway, I thought that story describes Grandpa perfectly in several very significant ways. His body was within a week of death, even if he didn't know it, and yet he still had the energy to drive to Mentor 3 days in a row, or not in a row, but 3 days in the same week, and try again. The fact that he even wanted to reach out and start this new project is just incredible. He never let his pain and failing body get in the way of his desire to live and spend time with his family. He was very committed to staying busy. He was always doing something. He wanted to do a new project. He was always doing something. Part of staying busy for him was finding himself a good project. That would explain his disappointment in the fact that no work was required for that plane. Even though we didn't get to build a plane together, we still enjoyed the process of pursuing the project, and for me, that matters a lot. All in all, Grandpa Lester was a very kind, loving, generous, and hardworking man who always tried to be there for the people he loved, and man, did he succeed.
Good afternoon. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. I'm Isaac, Lester Wyman's youngest and best grandkid. He was the best grandpa ever. He would go to sporting events near and far. He would go to my musicals, and he would always go to Grandparents' Day every year. And at Grandparents' Day, he'd always sit in the hall waiting 2 hours before it was supposed to start. Just sitting there forever. And when it was time to get in the classroom and everyone said who their grandkid was, he would go in and say, "Hello, my name is Lester P. Wyman, and I am Isaac Lazar's grandparent." And he was the best, and without him it's really hard, but I love my grandpa. Thanks.
Phil?
Good afternoon. I am not Debbie's or Amy's or Dan's son or grandson. My name is Philip Belsuns, and indulge me by waving your hands. Everybody, wave your hand. I'm saying that because every time Lester would pass by to go to Chicago or the west side of Cleveland, he would always call me and say, "I'm waving. Are you waving back?" Every time. So I said, "Yes, I'm waving back," even though he couldn't see me because there's a wall between the I-90 and our home. 43 years ago, we were homeless. And the context and background of what I'm saying is that we were driving from the Philippines, from Philadelphia, and our van broke down in Cleveland. We were heading to Los Angeles Gestalt Institute. And the van broke down, and there were no spare parts. So we called Dr. Rainwater, Gestalt LA, and said, we'll be late for the training. And she said, where are you? I said, we're in Cleveland. And he said, look up Gestalt Cleveland, they're the best in the world. We didn't have money. We slept in our van, and in the Philippines, there are no winter. It was getting cold 43 years ago, so we parked our van behind the old Gestalt building. We slept in the van until it got cold. And one day, sous chef invited us to live in a third floor in exchange to babysit our 3 kids. And then few days afterwards, we discovered that we were connected to the food co-op. I don't know if you remember the food co-op that people come and work and get free meals. Unbeknownst to us, he was doing his Lester. He was doing maneuvering behind the scene and got us to live in that home for a year and a half. That's Lester, how we met Lester. So 43 years ago, we were homeless and we found a home. He's a friend, a brother. We became co-faculty of the Couples and Family Therapy in the Gestalt Institute. And ever since, we did a lot of talking, and he became a humor, a joke, and laughing partner. And we would exchange jokes. And almost every 3 or 4 days the last year, we would call each other and tell jokes, and he would laugh, and I would laugh, and we would talk deeply. And 3 or 4 years ago, he reminded me, well, every time he reminded me, you're giving a eulogy for me. And Amy keeps reminding me, you have to start preparing eulogy for her dad. So a few weeks ago, I told him my eulogy, the general outline. I said, Les, it's better for me to tell you while you're still alive how wonderful you are versus telling you after you die. After you die, it's for your friends and families, people who love you deeply. And so he told me, make sure you tell jokes, because that's one of our connections. So if I could master it, I'm going to tell jokes. And I said, Les, I need 3 hours to talk about you. And he said, maybe 4 hours would be enough. So, one of the people mentioned about he was great when it comes to metaphor. And one of the things that he taught me was toilet seat, the commode seat. That transformed him. In the context of relational, he was into relational connection, engagement, as everybody was talking, and that I find it very moving. And he said he learned his lesson that before he would not put down, if he did put down the toilet seat, it was a chore. But finally, it dawned on him that putting down the toilet seat is not a chore. He put down the toilet seat because he loved Marcia. So the chore became a love connection. The toilet seat, the commode seat became a connection between him. And Les was a wonderful polarity person. He was able to play and integrate the polarity between his professional life and his personal life. Amy was telling me that he was a Gestalt and family his whole life. Professionally, he was the one who helped, led the connection between Gestalt Institute of Cleveland and Israel Gestalt. And Lale and myself became faculty members taught there in 1999, and a lot of people did that. He also used the principles in connection with couples and family therapy. And he also led the GATCO, the certifying program. One of the jokes that he wanted, that he kept asking me to repeat, is the joke about Moshe and Ruth. I don't know if that's the way you pronounce it. Moshe, that they went to the doctor, and the doctor told Moshe, Moshe, you have herpes. And so they went home, and Moshe asked Ruth, Ruth, what is herpes? And Ruth said, I don't know. I thought you knew. And so Ruth said, okay, let's look at the dictionary, the definition of herpes. So Ruth looked at the definition of herpes. And he said, Moshe, you don't have to worry. According to the dictionary, it only attacks the Gentiles. The last joke I told him, that I told him 10 times, but he kept repeating just before, a few days before he died, was the joke about the Chinese man and the Jewish, their friends working together. And after work, they decided to take a drink, and to go to a bar and take drinks. After a few sips, the Jewish friend punched the Chinese nose. And so the Chinese friend said, why are you doing that? And then the Jewish man said, for starting Second World War. And the Chinese man, I'm Chinese. The Japanese were the ones who did that. Okay, next day, the two friends went to the same bar, started sipping. And after a few sips, the Chinese friend punched the Jewish friend on the nose, and the Jewish friend said, oh, is that a retaliation of yesterday? And the Chinese friend said, no. It's because for sinking the Titanic ship. Sinking the Titanic ship. So the Chinese man, who cares? Iceberg, Goldberg, Goldenberg, they're all the same. You're all the same. I canvassed some of my friends, Marlene, Vicky, several years ago, Jim, and a few other people, Sharifa, Marianne, Francis, Mark, Dorothy, Ansel, Tali. Give me words that would describe Les. And they said, very loving, generous, articulate, brilliant. As everybody said, loving parent. So many grandkids testified, very choiceful about sharing feelings and thoughts. And he heard firmly his ideas, and he was generous in mentoring others. He carried the torch of legacy and tradition. When you throw a pebble into the lake, you have ripples that move outward, and you don't know where the ripples are going to end. Les threw his heart into the ocean of life, and he touched so many lives, not only in Cleveland, not only in Chicago, but in Australia, in Hong Kong. I know I've talked to them on the phone. And I'm taking some excerpts from what they wrote. I'm glad to see the opportunity for people to gather and recognize for all you have contributed nationally and internationally, crossing cultures. As a person who could fly airplanes, he was a pilot, you knew how to navigate dreams that mattered to people. Israel, and I love Israel, Israel represents the dream that continues to emerge. Another note, last week, some of the Israel Geek members went to visit, and Lale and myself were present, carrying with them love, many letters, and a certificate to show that trees were planted in his honor, a common honoring gesture in the country of Israel. Another excerpt, cherishing our times together, treasuring the inspiration, egoless generosity, and brilliant creativity you have let us experience, dear Lester. We miss you, and will keep missing you, but the part of you that remains with us is solid and present always with us every day of our lives because you have impacted our hearts. We are grateful, respectful, and loving you. Thank you, Les, for all you have done and been in such a modest, unassuming manner. Generosity is your middle name. We are blessed to have known you. When you throw a pebble into the lake, ripples effect. Again, Les threw his heart into the ocean of life. It impacted globally. So could you do this? Make your heart, do this gesture. When you throw your heart in connection, engage with one another, they expand. And lastly, as a farewell, goodbye. Could you wave your hands? May you rest in peace. And the people that you've impacted, may they continue to impact the world as you've impacted us and bring us home.
Let's rise, everybody. El mole rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamatzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malot kedoshim utehorim, anabal harachamim hastirehu, b'seter knafecha leolamim, utzror b'tzrorechem et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom amishkavo, v'nomar amen. May we remember all of the worthy deeds that he performed in the land of the living. God is now his portion. May he rest in peace. And we all say amen. Let's be seated. We want to offer our condolences to Marcia, to Dan and Cassie, Debbie and Joe, Amy and Evan, Rochelle and Martin, and Isabella, Henry, Nicole and Jennifer, Megan, Nancy and Lincoln, Emmett and Isaac. The family will be receiving visitors for the Shiva visitation beginning today following the burial portion of the service. That visitation, that Shiva, will take place in Shaker Heights, 2678 Rochester Road. Again, Rochester Road, 2678 in Shaker Heights today until 7 p.m. Tomorrow evening from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Sunday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. We're now going to move to the burial portion of the service. Please remain in your seats for another moment. The pallbearers should now come forward.